The story of pilgrims and Puritans seeking a new life of freedom began in the Old World.
The land here is second to none. Beautiful mountains, creeks, nature. When my dad started, he was 17 years old. And to see where he's at now, I've always wanted to follow in his footsteps.
Fleeing the tyranny of religious persecution, European Christians sought for a new life of freedom. Emerging from the earth, a symbol of a relatively unpopulated area, this collection of new colonies would be established on two foundational principles. And I saw another beast come up out of the earth. He had two horns like a lamb.
In Bible prophecy, horns are a symbol of power. Having the two horns are said to be lamb-like. The lamb, of course, is a symbol of Jesus.
You have two parallel powers ruling simultaneously in this new nation. You have the church side of things, the spiritual side, and you have the civil side of the state that's free from all monarchy rule or kings. And that's the first time that's ever happened in all of human history.
When I ride my horse, you can feel the wind, see the colors of the clouds, the colors of the sky. You get to take the time and stop and recognize a beautiful thing at once.
The open skies provided a land of opportunities for those who believed in the God of the Bible, in many gods, or no God at all. America's founding documents enshrined its revolutionary ideas. Church and state were to be kept separate.
The concept of liberty, of self-government, really never happened in the world. At the heart of liberty is the risk that people will choose not to be free, that they will choose wrongly, that they will cease to be virtuous, and all of it falls apart. The most Christian thing you can do when you're forming a government is to allow people to reject Christian faith.
The Founding Fathers were very aware of all of the religious factionalism and the battles that had been fought over religion in the Old World. And so rather than designating any one faith, let alone any one religious denomination, as being the established religion, they said, let's stay out of it altogether. And so the First Amendment ensured that there would be this separation between church and state. And that, in turn, was a stroke of genius on their part.
Freedom at a ranch, it's so open down here, you don't worry about pretty much nothing. It's a dream come true. You know, not many people get to enjoy it, and I do, and I cherish it.
Men and women had fled the old world to establish the new. But not everyone who came to the new world enjoyed a life of freedom. And not everyone who came did so by choice. As free men and women arrived in the land of promise, so did thousands of slaves. Foretelling the developing character of this new nation, the prophecy said, "It had 2 horns like a lamb, but it spoke like a dragon."
My name is Reverend Robert Jones Sr., and I am a storyteller and a musician. I first became interested in music as a result of my grandmother bringing home an influential blues record. I was fascinated by the sound of acoustic country blues.
In 1619, an English privateer ship landed in Virginia, its hull filled with human cargo. African slaves were sold for food, beginning the new nation's sin of slavery. Despite having lamb-like qualities, this new nation would speak and act as a dragon.
There is an excruciating tension at the heart of American society that is there right from the beginning. The founding document of the United States says that all men are created equal, but that's written by a man, Thomas Jefferson, who owns a slave.
Slavery is antithetical to the original concept of America and American liberty.
Racism and slavery are the great hypocrisy, the great contradiction, and the great evil at the heart of the American experiment.
For many enduring the hardships of slavery, they found hope in the stories of the Bible. Their experiences forever remembered in songs.
Deep river, my home is over Jordan. Deep river, Lord, I wanna cross over into campground. Deep river, my home is over Jordan. Deep river, Lord, I wanna cross over into campground. Don't you wanna go to that gospel feast, to that promised land where all is peace? Oh, deep river, my home is over Jordan. Deep river, Lord, I wanna cross over into campground. Don't you wanna go to that gospel feast, to that promised land where all is peace? Oh, deep river, my home is over Jordan. Deep river, Lord, I wanna cross over into campground. I wanna cross over into campground.
In the mid-1800s, Detroit became a beacon of hope for slaves seeking freedom. Codenamed Midnight, Detroit was the last stop in a long journey before crossing the river into Canada. The path to freedom became known as the Underground Railroad. Michigan's first African-American church was founded in 1836 at the Second Baptist Church by 13 former slaves.
When the freedom seekers arrived at most of the safe havens, especially the ones here at Second Baptist, they received shelter, clothing, a place to rest, food, and probably some directions on where to go.
Second Baptist Church helped freedom seekers escape oppression. But the issue of slavery continued to rage, leading to a brutal civil war.
We fought a war in which 500,000 young men died and slavery was abolished. We have to celebrate that. We have to celebrate that eventually, through the blood and the decades, we got this right. Where we got to was where most of the founders had hoped we could get to, and they were right, we did.
Slavery served as an example of this power speaking as a dragon.
Being righteous means to do something that is contrary to what the majority might like you or want you to do. And most of those abolitionists were more concerned about being righteous than about being good.
The founding documents stated that all were equal in the eyes of their creator, but not all had been treated with dignity. The stain of slavery is a constant reminder of America's dark past. But the prophecy foretold a global persecution to come. Today, the United States of America stands as the undisputed superpower of the world. Its history shows a rapid rise to economic, military, and political dominance. During the 1800s, America developed at a frenzied pace. In the 1890s, American imperialism surged into Latin America and across the Pacific Ocean into East Asia. The destruction of 2 world wars devastated Japan, France, and Germany, leaving a global power vacuum soon to be filled.
The United States came swooping in the final years of those wars to claim the lion's share of the spoils and increased its relative advantage in wealth and military power through each of those wars.
The horror of World War II was brought to an end by the unleashing of America's most devastating weapon. In the following decades, America would seek to reshape the world into its image through democracy and free trade.
At the end of World War II, the United States accounted for half of the global economy. And so it was just in a dominant position we haven't seen from any other country. And it then formed institutions and alliances to essentially lock in those gains for the long run. And we're still largely living in the world that was created after World War II, when the United States was at the height of its relative power.
The United States' geographical position supersized economy, and strong military have secured its status as a world power.
The American consumer market is bigger than that of the next 5 nations combined. The dollar is used in 90% of international financial transactions, which gives the US Treasury Department a lot of ability to cut countries out of the international trade system. And the US has military bases all over the globe and really only has the major aircraft carriers to move large military forces abroad and fight wars for an extended period of time on the other side of the globe. No other country comes close, and we just haven't seen this kind of gap between number 1 and number 2 before. If you actually look down at the major metrics of national power, it becomes very clear that the gap between number 1 and number 2 is much larger today than in any previous period of international history.
If you think about the criteria the Bible outlines for this power, trying to identify what it is, you're looking for a global power that can somehow influence the economies, the militaries, the legislative bodies, the societies around the world. And the United States is uniquely fit to that description.
During the 20th century, the United States became the greatest superpower the world has ever seen. But in order for the prophecy to be fulfilled, she would have to form a new and lasting alliance. The prophecy outlines 2 beasts or nations. Emerging from the peoples of Europe, the first beast blasphemed God and persecuted his true believers. It is identified as the Roman Church, in which the powers of the state and church combined. According to the prophecy, the second beast, the United States of America, would rise to world power and form an alliance with the first beast, the Roman Church. He executed all the authority of the first beast in his presence and makes the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast. During the 20th century, a new power came to the international stage: communism. Brutal dictators fed by evil ideologies spread death and disaster around the world. Here in the heart of Romania's capital, Ceausescu and his communist leaders delivered hate-filled speeches in the Omnia Room. These abandoned relics are a reminder of the brutality under their regime. Children suffered greatly, and many were forced to live in orphanages.
Abandoned in the orphanage, I faced bullying and isolation. I was forced to fight for entertainment.
I was left with 200 other children. Every day we would look through the front gates, wondering when our parents would come and get us.
The world watched on as an expanding Soviet empire challenged American power. A decision by 111 cardinals in Rome would strike communism in an unexpected way.
So after there had been nothing but Italian popes for 455 years, to pick a Polish pope at this time, really kind of the height of the Cold War, just astounded everybody.
The new Polish Pope wasted no time confronting the evils of communism. His first visit was to his homeland, to Victory Square.
He stands there, and all around this massive crowd of repressed Poles chanting, "We want God, we want God." You have the communist secret police, and he tells them, he says, "Be not afraid."
Across the Atlantic Ocean, a young actor turned politician watched these events unfold.
In the United States, Ronald Reagan was at his home in California, turned on the evening news, and there were tears in Reagan's eyes. And he said, "That's it, that's it, that's it. The Pope is the key, the Pope is the key, the Pope is the key. We've got to reach out to this Vatican and this Pope, and we've got to find a way to get elected. This is the key to winning the Cold War."
6 weeks apart, in the spring of 1981, Pope John Paul II and Ronald Reagan took bullets from would-be assassins. Both survived and confided to each other that God had saved their lives for the purpose of defeating communism.
This was the first time that you have an American president and a pope working together, and in the process, changing world history. Sometimes something good can happen, but a precedent can be set that becomes troubling down the way. And the question I think that many people ask is, how close does the US government want to get to any particular religious organization? Because we have historical precedent throughout history and throughout cultures that when the state and the religion get too close, both of them are corrupted.
As a child, I longed for freedom, for opportunities, and for a future of peace.
President Reagan met with the Pope in 1982 to orchestrate the divine plan. With the help of the CIA and Vatican cardinals, Reagan and the Pope were able to undermine the forces of communism.
I remember having been taught about American prophecy and how the United States was going to have this great influence on the world, unfortunately, negatively. And I remember thinking, well, how could that happen? How could prophecy be fulfilled with the Soviet Union everywhere? And then what? Was the Soviet Union gonna just disappear or something? Probably the biggest nemesis to prophecy being fulfilled was the Soviet Union.
The Holy Alliance allowed orphans such as Teresia and Gita to find freedom. They now live to help others in need.
After high school, I met Gita. He was a big gift, and he showed me what affection and love feels like.
After meeting Teresia, my life changed. I entered university and now help other children.
The divine plan helped bring an end to the Cold War and liberated millions of people.
When Ronald Reagan was told, don't call the Soviet Union an evil empire, he pounded the desk. He said, it is an evil empire and it's time to shut it down. When John Paul II was asked by his own staff, no, don't go to Poland for your first trip. You can't do that. He pounded the desk. He said, we're going to Poland, and stood in front of that sea of repressed humanity and told them, be not afraid. So here are two men acting with conviction, Protestant president, right, Catholic Pope, and they were not afraid. They were not afraid to stand for what they believed was right and against evil. And in doing so, they came together and achieved one of the greatest events of the 20th century, of history. They peacefully won the Cold War.
A pope and a president had worked together to bring about the downfall of communism. America and the Roman Church had formed an alliance, just as the prophecy had foretold. The prophecy described a movement of deception to come. He deceives those who dwell on earth, telling them to make an image to the beast. The dangers of mixing religion with politics was seen in the life of the world's most famous evangelist, Billy Graham.
Billy Graham was a charismatic and captivating kid that grew up in a provincial and quaint environment. He was tall, he was handsome, he was engaging. When we think about Billy Graham, we're thinking about someone who always felt a little large for his environment.
Graham's passion to spread the good news of Jesus took him across the world, filling tents and stadiums with eager listeners. His popularity reached as far as the Oval Office, where he earned the listening ear of presidents such as Richard Nixon.
Graham was always drawn to political figures and to political power.
It's hard to imagine two people who are, on the face of things, as different as Billy Graham and Richard Nixon. I mean, Graham was known for his piety and his modesty, and Nixon cursed like a drunken sailor.
They met in the Senate dining room shortly after Nixon's election to the Senate in 1950. And they played golf that afternoon. They were that close and immediately forged a friendship.
Graham's friendship grew, and he became a close advisor to the president. But that would all change.
Ever since Billy Graham had the opportunity to meet Harry Truman, he had been trying to get inside that West Wing and have access to the White House and the halls of power. But after the disaster of Watergate, I think Billy Graham learned a humbling lesson. I think he was like a moth to the flame, but that burned him.
Graham sought to distance himself from American political power, but he witnessed a growing movement seeking to use religion for political gain.
American civic religion was very intentionally created by our federal government through several administrations in the middle of the 20th century. And so it's kind of Christian in form, but it's really pagan, because it's not so much about our humbly submitting to the will of the Creator. It's really about invoking God's blessing on our own goals and aspirations.
Religion or the faith always functions best from the margins of society and not in the councils of power. Once you begin to seek political influence or political power, you lose your prophetic voice.
Billy Graham learned the dangers of mixing religion and politics. But not all religious leaders have learned his lesson.
Scary things happen when political power is used to enforce religion. People's consciences are violated, people who resist face persecution, and people in power easily become corrupted because human beings weren't designed to compel one another's consciences.
The danger of a religio-political alliance is that it allows politics to garner the spiritual force of the church to advance its agenda, and the church to garner the force of the state to advance hers. The offspring of such religio-political union is spiritual deception and physical coercion, potentially compelling all to comply with agendas that go counter to God's word.
Billy Graham died having preached Christianity to more people than any other in history. His long life revealed the danger of mixing religion with politics. But the peace and prosperity that he sought to cultivate in his homeland would be ruptured by an attack with lasting devastation. The prophecy foretold a coming worldwide crisis, a time when personal freedoms would be stripped and individual loyalty to God would be tested. The second beast was given power to give life to the image of the first beast, so that the image could speak and make all who refuse to worship the image to be killed. It also forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark. Every year, millions of tourists stream into the modern-day capital of the world. But in 2001, New York City and the world were forever changed.
So I saw people coming out of the World Financial Center right about the time that the plane hit. So I went around the other side and went over by the American Stock Exchange, and you could see the fire from there, and it was horrific. There was their body parts strewn out that way. It was not nice. It was not nice.
The weeks after 9/11 brought the invasion of Afghanistan and the establishment of the Patriot Act.
I will not forget the wound to our country and those who inflicted it. I will not yield. I will not rest. I will not relent in waging this struggle for freedom and security for the American people.
The Patriot Act gave the U.S. government sweeping authority to go in and investigate people that potentially could be terrorist suspects, to detain them and question them in ways that previously wouldn't have been allowed under the law, to conduct surveillance in ways that previously had been repressed or limited. And so it really just gave the US government not quite a blank check, but certainly a greater free hand to prosecute a war on terror. So even though we call it a war on terror, it's in some ways a stepped up intelligence and almost police action where you're trying to identify and track down either individual perpetrators or small groups that are often working within countries rather than traditional nation states doing battle together.
As we wage the war on terror overseas, we're also going after the terrorists here at home. And one of the most important tools we have used to protect the American people is the Patriot Act.
The events of 9/11 and the resulting Patriot Act removed rights and freedoms. Guantanamo Bay became a symbol of abuse, injustice, and disregard for the rule of law. A place where terrorism suspects could be detained without a process and interrogated without restraint.
We are going to treat them exactly right. That's right. We're going to treat them humanely, and it will be appropriate to their circumstance.
The beauty of the United States is that we are a nation of laws, and those laws include an abhorrence of torture, an abhorrence of taking people outside the legal process. And once you start doing that with some group of people, well, you're on a slippery slope. And it's a very, very, very dangerous slippery slope to be on.
At some point, the freedoms that Americans have enjoyed and the freedoms that America has pioneered for the world, eventually, these are going to go away.
The international response to 9/11 revealed the power of America's global influence.
Revelation 13 uses this curious phrase, the image of the beast. The image here is an image of Christendom throughout the ages where the powers of church and state came together. Revelation 13 very clearly divides between those who receive the mark of the beast and those who don't. And that government power will be brought to bear by the religious majority against the minority who are dissenters.
Those who remain loyal to God alone will be seen as disruptors in the eyes of world governments, and they will be identified by the biblical way in which they worship.
At the end time, worship will be the main issue. The book of Revelation paints what worship will be like at the end time. It says, "Here are they that keep the commandments of God and have the faith of Jesus." This is, it says, the everlasting gospel of those who worship him, who made the heavens and the earth and the seas and the springs of water. This language is taken from the fourth commandment, which emphasizes God's creation in 6 days and his rest on the Sabbath.
So you have Jesus Christ in the seventh-day Sabbath, or you have the Antichrist in the first-day imposter Sabbath. And the whole world is going to be brought to a decision point. Are you going to be loyal to Jesus Christ, or are you going to follow the Antichrist? And in the final analysis, loyalty is the issue. Sabbath just happens to be the framework, the canvas upon which we paint our decisions.
The dramatic events of 9/11 reshaped the modern world. Personal freedoms were taken away in the fight for global democracy and justice. The prophecy outlines that worldwide movements will one day persecute God's true believers. The Bible's prophecies accurately foretold the rise of a new nation that formed a government based on the principles of liberty. But this nation persecuted the most vulnerable, grew to influence all corners of the earth, and formed a worldwide lasting alliance. An alliance that will one day force the world to worship the creature rather than the creator.
Shortly after 9/11, I was taking a high-speed ferry from the west side of Manhattan down. It was shortly after the attacks, and I remember looking over and seeing the buildings gone, and then seeing the Statue of Liberty and getting instantly choked up, because there is something so beautiful and so noble about that statue and about what it represents. Even though we'd been attacked, there she stood holding out her torch to strangers to say, "We want you to come here."
Standing on broken shackles and shining her light to the world, Lady Liberty still holds her torch. She overlooks a city that once was ground zero for human horror, but still welcomes foreigners and outcasts. As earthly powers meet their downfall, God's final message of hope lights up the world with an invitation for all to worship the Creator of heaven and earth. A call to worship a loving God who offers peace in troubled times. And a call to follow Jesus wherever he goes.